What I wanted to chat to you guys today was basically about the topic that I was invited to speak on, which was how have I used new technology to gain an advantage? And I was chatting to someone earlier today, and I was saying since I started, which was about 10 years ago now, the term technology has changed absolutely massively from, it used to be, you know, just traditional hardware. Now it's much more about software, you know, social platforms, etc., etc. So rather than speak to you today about hardware and how that's impacted what I do, I'm going to speak to you about social platforms as well. So just to start with, who am I? I'm Ted. Actually, we've pretty much gone over this, so I basically sound like a broken record. But I did start very young. I started at 12 years old, and the story behind that is my grandparents actually live in Spain. They have done for 35 years, and we every single summer used to go out and visit them. We just moved into a new house in Spain, and I was walking around and bumped into my neighbor. It was a guy called Ben, who had a sister called Roxy, and another brother called Max. And what struck me, coming from a family where, you know, everything's very equal, if mum and dad were going to buy me a Mars bar, they'd buy my three sisters a Mars bar. I then saw Ben driving around on this petrol scooter. He had the brand new O2 PDA. And then I looked at his brother and sister, and they had nowhere near the same thing. So immediately, that started to pose questions, and I went over to Ben and said, mate, how on earth have you got this petrol scooter? I want to go, number one. Number two is, how have you got it? Because I want to buy one for myself. At that age, at 12, it's obviously not about the money. I didn't really understand money. My pocket money was probably £5 a year or something. But what I could relate to was the material things. And the material things that Ben had was this petrol scooter. I was absolutely determined to buy one of these petrol scooters for myself. And after asking a few questions, it transpired that Ben, at 18 years old, actually owned a search engine called Vioda. It actually doesn't exist anymore, but you know, he had a team behind him. He was based up in Newcastle, and after asking him a number of questions, I basically thought, if he can do it, why can't I? So from that day on the way back from Spain, coming home from my holiday, I brought a pen and paper, started to jot down tons of different ideas. I thought this must be pretty easy. I came up with a completely random idea. I still don't really know what it is. It doesn't exist anymore either, but essentially it turned into a shopping portal. And again, you have to sort of rewind 10 years or so, when affiliate marketing was just coming into test and just coming into pilot programs. And I created this site called Red Eyes, and it was using a free website builder, which is now webs.com. When I started, it was called freewebs.com, and used this pre-made template. I obviously had no coding experience, no design experience. I didn't know, anything about design to coding. All I knew is I wanted to get that petrol scooter. So I found these templates and found a good one. I like the look of it. It's a nice red color. And then I thought, what on earth am I going to put on this? So I basically, illegally at the time, without realizing, again, went to eBay, took their logo, went to EasyJet, took their logo, went to Amazon, took their logo, and stuck it on my site. And I basically led with the tagline, whatever you want to buy online, I'm the man. And basically, just through sheer determination, I put those logos on there, and I basically just sat back and thought, I'm pretty much going to be loaded now. Didn't happen. What had to happen was I built a product. I now had to market it. And this was before the eras of Facebook. It was before Bebo. It was just about the time of Friends Reunited. And I obviously was 12. I didn't have a PayPal account. I couldn't have internet banking. I couldn't even sign up to any of these social networks. So I basically had to create tons of different accounts, go on to all these different niche forums about, people discussing where I should travel to, what shoes I should buy. And I basically posted honest reviews saying, yeah, I've spent a bit of time in Spain, here are some of the places to go, these are what shoes you should buy. Obviously, it might have been absolute bullshit, but basically it started to go viral, and through sheer determination and thousands of posts, people started to click my signature at the bottom of the post and come back to my site. Now, because of the sheer amount of traffic that I started to generate, I had Apple, who were my first client, basically sent a huge contract through the post saying, you're illegally using our logo, but we've noticed you've sent us so much traffic, we're just about to start piloting this affiliate marketing. Would you help us? And again, at that age, I could barely read and write. So I was looking at this contract thinking, I don't know what this is. So I ran upstairs, because we had to share a laptop. Ran upstairs, showed Dad this contract. He pretty much passed out. And basically, he was the one that told me Apple are saying every single user, every single person you send to their site, they're going to give you a 5% commission. And sure enough, once I knew Apple could do that, I thought eBay should be doing it, Amazon should be doing it, EasyJet should be doing it. And sure enough, I started to partner with all these different affiliate marketers. And it took off. It did really, really well. I eventually bought my petrol scooter. I then crashed it. And basically thought this was great. This ignited a passion for me. I was totally and utterly immersed in it. I didn't want to do anything else. School pretty much fell by the wayside. My reports went just off a cliff. But I knew this is what I wanted to do, and anything I couldn't basically add back to Red Eyes and this new business I created, I didn't have any interest in it. My parents started to feed me news cuttings of other successful entrepreneurs, and there's one name in particular I want you guys to remember, a guy called Nick Bell, who sold an entertainment site called Teen Front when he was about 16, which was an entertainment and gaming site for teenagers for £1 million. So it was stories like this, it was people like Ben that absolutely inspired me. And that article, that story stuck with me forever. After a while, just because I got a bit bored of Red Eyes, it was literally, I don't know if, hands up, did anyone see the website, the $1 Million homepage? Yeah, so quite a few people. It eventually started to look like that, and it wasn't very pretty, didn't know where on earth I could take this thing, and I sort of thought that it had hit its earning potential. So I moved on. I wanted a search engine, just like Ben did. So after I realized I wasn't good enough coder, I couldn't code this thing myself, I'm going to have to buy it. So I took some of the money that I'd made from Red Eyes, and I basically tried to find a search engine to purchase. I found one called surfpony.com, which was apparently profitable, doing quite well, and I found it up for sale for about £50,000. And I put £45,000 aside for this. Again, bearing in mind my age, I have 2 younger sisters and 1 elder one. And of course, I was on my petrol scooter. I had the flashy toys. I said, girls, if you want some of what I've got, you need to give me all your savings. So basically, they clubbed together, gave me pretty much 30 years worth of their savings, a couple of £1,000 to buy this thing, because I basically promised them all the material things they could ever want. Of course, what happened? 6 months down the track, after buying this thing, due to my complete naivety, Surf Pony absolutely crashed. I lost absolutely everything I've made from Red Eyes and all my sister's money, and I still haven't paid them back. That was my first failure, and one thing I would stress, and I will stress throughout this quick talk, is that you shouldn't be afraid of failure. Everyone is going to fail. Everyone buries their failures quite quickly. Even the dad said it himself. That was my failure. I've had about 25 others since, and it hurts just as much as the first one did, but you do learn the most from your challenges and the failures that you do. I then didn't know what to do next, so I asked my parents, what on earth do I do now? I can't go back and create another Red Eyes. Everyone's doing this now. What do I do? And it was Dad that said, well, why not try and sell the services that you've created from making your own websites and things like that? And sure enough, I'm from a very sleepy town in the southwest of England called Taunton in Somerset. I don't know if anyone's been there. And basically it's quite backwards in terms of technology. Okay, it probably still is. I haven't been there in a while, and it gave me an opportunity. I was going around to smaller companies, individuals, saying, everyone in London is online. You guys need to have a digital presence as well. I'm not going to charge you £5,000 for a website, which is what some of the top firms were charging. I can do it for 200-300 quid. So I did that, and it worked. I scaled it up and eventually did end up into the city doing some pretty hefty websites for lawyers. And that's when I basically took on my first employee, which is a good little story I'll just tell you about. Again, 14 years old, no internet banking, no PayPal. This guy was Indian, a guy called Jaya. So how on earth do I pay him? I basically had to go to the post office, take my pounds into the post office and say, can I change this into US dollars? So I did that, and then literally put them in an envelope and sent them over to Delhi. I sent him probably about 6 paychecks, and never heard back from him. So that was my sort of first employee. Again, bit of a failure there, but lesson learned. Don't send anyone money abroad, basically. After that, I wanted to go back into, I didn't enjoy working for these clients at that age. I still have a burning ambition to do my own thing. And this was coming up to the time of the App Store, Steve Jobs launching the iPhone, the iPod, and iTunes. And a ton of these stories were coming back out about people who had made a lot of money creating these apps, creating these iPhone apps. And I basically thought, I've done a lot online. I've missed some things out, but if you're checking Wikipedia, you might find some other things. And basically, I moved on to the App Store, and that's when I raised my sort of first investment. And I didn't know where I was going to get this money from, but I had basically been networking very hard from a young age, just because I think network was very important. I realized that, and I learned a lot from people who had already accomplished in their careers. So I went away and I raised £40,000 from a number of different investors, but the two sort of main ones were the guys who founded Friends Reunited. I kept going back and forth to them. I met them at an event. I sort of hassled them. I was probably about that. Actually, no, probably I haven't grown that much since 14. But I was, I was still very young, and I was basically tugging on their shirt, saying, "Look, I've got a great idea. Can you invest?" The first idea I went to them with, they sort of ushered me along, not interested. But I kept in touch, and it was just through, again, complete persistence and hard work that they eventually got the time of their day, and they invested in me. So they invested in me, and I basically went away, and I was watching a program on television. I think it was Channel 4 that did it, and they were taking pictures of celebrities' faces, and they were using an equation to basically decide how attractive these celebrities were on a scale of 1 to 10. Liz Hurley apparently was the most attractive, and I thought, look, this is interesting. It had a massive amount of buzz, and I thought I can replicate this and put this into an iPhone app. So I did that. And basically you took a picture of your friend or yourself, and it gave you an attractive, scientifically attractive score from 1 to 10. Absolutely ridiculous app. Obviously, not a sustainable business whatsoever. But bearing in mind when I started, there was only 80,000 apps in the store. There's now 900,000. Okay, and it went viral, and to date it's had over 6 million downloads. So that was very, very successful, and what started out just as a test turned into one of my biggest successes. And it was that success, it was that facial recognition technology that basically probably combined that with the age I was. It basically got attention from a couple of big corporations. I wanted to sell it. I wanted to move into something a bit more interesting, probably back to search engines. And I wanted to find out who I could sell it to. I was looking around, how on earth do I find someone to sell it to? How do I get my foot in the door with these corporations? I am nobody, essentially. But to my absolute amazement, the chief product officer at News International, just after phone hacking, was called Nick Bell. He was the guy I read the article about when I was 12 years old. So my foot in the door there was, Nick, this is going to sound horrendously creepy, but I know everything about you. You did this, 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 this. And some guy who's obviously, you know, very, very busy guy, high up in a corporation, he said, that is quite freaky, but I'll give you 5 minutes. And that was it. I went in there, had 5 minutes, and I ended up selling that technology to News Corporation. And off the back of that, I basically had to speak with my investors and say, look, this is where we are. What do you guys think? I said I never wanted to work for anyone else. I never wanted to work in a corporation. What do you guys think? And they said, actually, Ted, at your age, to get experience in a corporation, learning how to deal with people, learning how to manage with people, it will give you a huge amount of value. So I was there for 2 years, and as Matthew said, I headed up the innovation department there, which was very interesting. Again, I learned a lot, how not to run a corporation, the bureaucracy and the politics that come working within a corporation. But it was a fascinating period. And the guys who I was working with have just all actually moved to New York to work on the merger there. And it was about that time, so about 6 months ago, where basically I felt the value was no longer proportionate between myself and News Corporation. So I stepped back out. I've just raised more funding from the Friends Reunited guys and also a guy who owns an agency in London. That sort of brings us up to now. So you've heard a bit about me. I want to take you through 3 stories today. These stories all gave me an advantage, so they are sort of relevant to the subject. This is actually something I wrote about not too long ago, and it created a huge amount of debate and very much polarizing views as well. So with any luck, I'll start to generate some discussion amongst you guys here as well. One thing I would say is, in today's day and age, it has never been easier to start a technology business, but it's never been harder to grow one because the competition is massive. Everyone's vying for the same thing. It might be the new social networking app, might be the new, Instagram, for example. It's very, very difficult. And I can tell you now, with a foot in both corporate and startup camps, there are a huge amount of techniques, different techniques, white hat, grey hat, black hat marketing, that people are doing to get their first 100 users, 1,000 users, and try and get scale. What's really impressed me about Nadav's speech was he's obviously self-funded. He's never raised any funding. In today's day and age, again, it seems that every startup entrepreneur or technology entrepreneur, rather than focus on profitability and the bottom line, they're focusing on getting that VC round in, which obviously dilutes their equity, which is strange, but that's where we are. Anyway, hope you enjoy these 3 stories. These 3 stories are stories that I have done. I'll admit it, I've done to gain an advantage. It might be an unfair advantage in some of your eyes. But I guess that will pose some interesting questions at the end. So the first one, take you back to when I raised the funding from the Friends Reunited guys. I didn't know how to get hold of these guys, so what I did was I created a blog. I basically monitored Steve Pankhurst. You can, if you look him up, Steve Pankhurst, you can send him an email. Did Ted do this to you? And he'll come back and say yes. So I monitored Steve. I was checking out what he was doing, where he was going, what he was tweeting about, etc., etc. I then wrote a blog post which was very relevant to what he was interested in, okay, or what he was doing, who he was invested in. I then created a number of LinkedIn accounts, and the beauty with LinkedIn is obviously that I imagine you guys are all on LinkedIn, right? The one thing, when I visit your profile, okay, you're going to get a notification saying, Ted's just visited your profile. And just because it's human nature, out of curiosity, you usually reciprocate. You will come back to my account and think, why on earth has Ted had a look at my account? Okay, so I basically thought, how on earth can I use that to my advantage? So I created a number of accounts. Yes, some of them were fake. 25. 24 were fake. I gave them all, very legitimate, very genuine, and very real biographies. I then posted the blog, which was obviously tailored to the content that Steve was writing about. On all these LinkedIn accounts, I then started to create statuses. or statuses. And it was saying, really insightful post from Ted. This guy knows what he's talking about. He should get investment. And I did that, on 25 different accounts. And then what did I do? I hit Steve's profile with it. So all of a sudden, he has all these notifications from various different people in an industry he knows very well. He then obviously reciprocates some of them because I can see when he does. And on top of that, I checked the analytics to see that I was getting some referral traffic from LinkedIn. So I knew he'd hit my blog. So I then basically waited a week. And I reached out to Steve. I sent him an email. Steve, you'll never have heard of me, but actually, I've been following you for a little while now. I'm interested in what you do. I'm actually trying to raise investment. I wrote a piece about gaining investment in London, the difficulty of it, and I published it last week. Can we have a chat? Can we have a coffee? And literally 5 minutes later, I get a reply saying, "Holy shit, Ted. I actually saw this article last week. Let's definitely grab a coffee." So I got my coffee, and you guys know what led to that. I met a number of other people in his network, and it led to investment. I've tried it a number of times since. It doesn't always work. But if you do persist, then they do respond, because they don't actually see your plan. And this runs through the next two stories as well. They don't see your plan. They see a coincidence. And a lot of these angel investors believe in fate. They believe in coincidence. So that is a story of LinkedIn. You guys can try it out for yourself. Just don't tell anyone I told you. So this story number 2 is with Twitter. I'm just going to grab some water, actually. So for a business that I was trying to build, when you're, again, trying to raise investment or prove a product works, one of the things you need to do is validate it, okay? You guys can all have the best ideas in the world. Two things. One, it's a very naive outlook to think that no one else is working on this idea. And actually, this is why I'll never sign an NDA, because that founder or that startup entrepreneur is automatically presuming that no one else has this idea. He's too focused on protecting his idea as opposed to executing it. And it, without a doubt, is 90% execution, 10% idea. So I created, again, a number of different accounts on Twitter who all had interest in technology, okay? I then set them up to auto-retweet a number of other accounts and other news accounts in that industry. So all of a sudden, these guys look genuinely real, right? They're retweeting TechCrunch, they're retweeting Mashable, they're retweeting other influencers in the technology circle, and they're even actually starting to auto-tweet their own tweets. So they look totally legitimate, okay? Now, I obviously have, working in technology, a number of other people who are genuine friends. And what I then would do would be, through scripts and programs that we create, would type their name in. I'll tell you one person, Dan Hopwood, who I basically thought, this guy has got a number of Twitter followers that I want to target. So I went ahead, checked his account. I exported and scraped all of his followers, so I knew that people were interested in what Dan's doing. I then basically post on all these different accounts, okay? Again, it might be relevant to a blog content that I've written or something interesting that I've been tweeting about. So I posted on all these different Twitter accounts. Then, through a script, I followed all the lists of the people that I've just downloaded, okay? So Dan Hopwood's followers, one of the fake Twitter accounts, I'm now following every single one of his followers, okay? Again, they see they've got a new follower, they reciprocate, and the first thing they see is a really insightful post from @Nashy. I'm going to go check out what he does. And sure enough, I was trying to validate a business idea, huge influx of Twitter followers, huge amount of buzz, and a huge amount of signups. And that's just another stage, or another thing I did to try and validate a business. Story number 3. Facebook. This one's really interesting, actually, and Facebook they actually facilitate this because they have power editing tools. They obviously close off a lot of their pages and groups because they want you to start paying pay-per-click adverts, right? To really niche target people that you're after. What I did was, I don't know if you guys even know, but Facebook do have groups, okay, which are basically, it might be app entrepreneur groups, it might be groups involved with fracking, mining industry, oiling, whatever, and they have private conversations within these groups, okay? I then joined them. I worked really, really genuinely hard to add value and content that the people within those groups could genuinely benefit from, okay? Now, for me, it was technology, so I was writing about things that I had an interest in, and I thought I was knowledgeable about. So I wrote a lot about these different things and was putting them on there. These guys could definitely see I was adding value, okay? And more importantly, they remembered my name. I then, again, using scripts, grabbed all their IDs of the people within that group, okay? I then uploaded those IDs to the Facebook Power Editor, which is the ad tool they use to create pay-per-click advertising. I put all these IDs into that ad, and I know every single one of those IDs has seen my content somewhere along the way. I then can obviously create a number of hyper-targeted adverts which say, do you know Ted Nash? Have you seen what Ted Nash has written? Check out Ted Nash's latest product. And again, just through methods like that, it's much, much lower cost per click because, again, it's hyper-targeted, and it's hugely effective. These guys have seen me before. They can relate to what this advert is, and more often than not, again, we come back to this serendipity part. It's hugely, hugely effective. I'm sure there are a number of other activities that startup people do, corporate people do as well. Those are just three that have worked very well for me. As I said when I started, deliberately, these activities often do create polarizing views. Some people view this as grey hat marketing. Some people view it as totally legitimate white hat marketing. Others at black hat. Now, everyone has different definitions for grey, black, and white hat marketing. I like to call it serendipitous marketing, and I'll tell you why, okay? It's a very fancy word, but all these people, okay, in some shape or form, I have added value to. And I go back to, you can create the best product in the world, okay? If no one knows it exists, what's the point in it, okay? Everyone I'm trying to target, they're not just random people, okay? These guys are people I think I can add value to. Because at the end of the day, you have to remember this is the business I'm trying to create, and eventually that needs to make money. That's not going to make money from people who aren't interested in technology, okay? Those three methods are just varying ways of getting my information, which I deem to add value to them in a number of different innovative ways. As I said earlier, the reason I think these forms of marketing are really important, again, whether you agree with them, disagree with them, or anything else, is because it has never been easier to start a business. Again, all my friends are in the startup industries. They are trying very, very hard to grow their business, but it is hugely, hugely competitive. And I know that having a foot in both startup camp and also corporate business, there are people, maybe even your competitors, using techniques like this. And I genuinely believe these are the guys who are truly innovating. And I want to leave you on one last quote, which is, don't just work hard, you need to start to work smart, and don't be afraid to try new things. Thank you.